Welcome to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Mike McDowd. Russell Jackman is still recovering from his shoulder surgery, so he'll be out for a few more weeks, that rascal. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a trivia question. We'll see if anyone and everyone knows the answer to these questions. And we will have a special guest coming up in the right after the break. Mike, let us know who our guest is going to be.
Well, I'm a little disappointed with you, Edward. I mean, right off the bat, you can see my background is purely in the Christmas spirit. And you're not saying a darn word. You just want me to get right into business and introduce my guest. Come on.
I'm sorry.
I know you love Christmas.
Be jolly.
We start early here. We go all the way through, but we have a phenomenal guest coming up. Her name is Dr. Ivana Rich. She is the athletic director of Edward Waters University in Jacksonville, Florida. We're going to talk about a subject that, and I don't want to really, I just want to give a little, it's a subject of college sports that needs to be talked about. It's called HBCU athletics. I don't ever hear about it. We're going to talk about it. Dr. Rich is an expert in the field. She is a gifted athletic director, and we're going to get her insight, her knowledge on the world of HBCU athletics, and we're going to talk about the purple and orange, Edward Waters University, the Fighting Tigers. So it's going to be fun today.
All right, and for those who don't know, historically black colleges, right? And it's funny because I still remember when I was a kid on Sunday morning, we would watch the Grambling highlights. And it was great because, it was really fun to see, the same thing like Notre Dame highlights. They had a whole half-hour show on just the highlights. And so I always used to root for Grambling. It was great. All right.
Yeah.
Stay with us, audience. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. When we come back, we're going to introduce our guest, Dr. Ivana Rich. Stay with us.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with my special guest host, Mike McDowd, who's not a guest host anymore. He's a regular permanent host, but we do have a special guest in the studio Zoom audience here. Mike, why don't you go ahead and tell us who's on today?
Well, listen, man, it's really nice to be special because you're special. Our guest is special. So together, we're just all special. Okay.
There you go.
We're special people. We're special kids. Listen, I'm really happy to invite our next guest on. Her name is Dr. Ivana Rich. She is the athletic director of a school in what is known as the Bold City. That would be Jacksonville, Florida. She is live in Jacksonville. I'm in Jacksonville. Edward's in San Francisco right now, or San Rafael, California. And Dr. Rich is really a leader, a motivator, an impressive young woman who is leading an institution that has so much promise, Edward Waters University. A lot of people around the country have never heard of Edward Waters. We're going to introduce the school to America for many reasons. It's part of a collective effort. It's one of the many. In fact, there are 99 HBCU schools in America, I'm told, and maybe Dr. Rich can correct me on that. But Edward Waters happens to be one of them. And my first question, first of all, welcome to the show, Doctor. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Question number one, and it's a really, I think it's a good question. Edward and I even talked about it. Why on traditional sports radio or even non-traditional sports radio, we never ever hear about the topic of HBCU athletics? And it's about time we talk about it. There's so much richness, tradition, and excellence in athletics, and it's so profound it's so important for the landscape of college sports, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that can be attributed to really exposure. I think a lot of individuals just don't know about HBCU sports and all that entails. It's HBCU sports is not just about, the basketball or the football or the volleyball. It's about the entire HBCU experience. And I think that's what people don't know about. And I think if more people were exposed to that, they would know about the bands. They would know about, the alumni and how they contribute to the culture and the experience of HBCUs. I think you would see more about HBCUs or hear more about HBCUs on radio. And I think exposure. I also think that, as a culture, we've become so monetized when it comes to sports. Everything is about the money and about the show. And I think, we need to go back to our roots. Like, what is sports really about? Sports has the ability to change lives. And at HBCUs, that's exactly what's happening. A lot of these students, this is sometimes their last choice or their last chance. We provide an opportunity for them to compete at a higher level and get their education. And so I think, to be able to tell our stories, we need more advocates, we need more partners, we need more cheerleaders to be able to help spread the word about the great things that are happening at HBCU institutions.
One thing I got to mention to you is I'm a cheerleader for you because I'm wearing my Edward Waters University polo shirt because you allowed me to do your football radio play-by-play this year. So I'm a big fan of Edward Waters. I have a connection with you and the university. I think there's a lot of and it's we're jumping right into it, but I think there's Edward will address another question, but I think there's a misconception about HBCU universities. It's a very diverse. They're very diverse institutions. They're not just. You think that only Black students go there, but I see all types of colors and creeds and people doing and achieving great things. There's a lot of diversity at HBC universities, and I think that is something that people miss. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. I think it's a myth, at this point that, they were historically created for African Americans to be able to get their education because they weren't permitted to go to other institutions. And so, but now HBCUs are extremely diverse. We have students at our institution from over 21 countries. Our teams are diverse, and it's across sports. We find diversity. We have, even on my basketball team, I have students who are international from different countries, volleyball, baseball. And I think that really adds to the value in HBCUs because when you get a diverse experience, it just makes you more well-rounded. As a former collegiate Division I athlete, I did go to a PWI institution. I had a great experience, but my team was very diverse. And I think that's why my experience was diverse. And that's why I'm the person I am today because of the experience I had playing on that team where I had teammates from Germany, teammates from Brazil, that had teammates from everywhere. I had a teammate my freshman year who was from the Native American reservation in Arizona. And so, learning about different cultures, people's different backgrounds and experiences. This is how we create well-rounded young people and future leaders of tomorrow. And so I think, a lot of people think HBCUs, they're only for Black people, only for Black students. No, we're for everyone.
I guess the word hasn't. Again, I'm a little past the college age now, but it wouldn't even occur to me. I barely got into a community college. No, I was a little smarter than that. It wouldn't occur to me to look at that on the list of what colleges would I like to go to see a historically Black college because even though that there's no specific discrimination, you only can be Black to go. I mean, I know that, but it just wouldn't occur to someone like me who's Caucasian to even think about, gee, maybe I should go to this college. How does that word get spread? Because I can't believe I'm the only one who would not even think about going to that college.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think that goes back to marketing. Mike and I talk about marketing all the time. Marketing and messaging is critical. And I think, when we're marketing our institutions, we have to show the full range of what we offer from an educational standpoint, from a social standpoint for the students, from an athletic standpoint. We have to show the full range of services. And I think that's what we're missing. I think we need better marketing. A lot of our HBCUs, we have small marketing departments, maybe one person doing 15 jobs. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to get the big picture out. But I think if people saw HBCUs, not as just HBCUs, but as institutions where we have the top biology program in the nation, or we're the top, engineering school in the nation. I talk about North Carolina A&T. They're like one of the top engineering schools.
Okay. So again, I mentioned this kind of before, like, like Grambling. I was always typically a black, Howard University,
Mhm.
but like, I had never heard of Edward Waters University. I wouldn't think of it as, an HBCU. One, I wonder how important it is to even attach that title to it. You know what I mean? Because that's
Mhm.
the mark. Well, again, I'm not a marketing expert or anything, but
But I think so. And I think something we have that's an advantage for us that I think we're starting to try to capitalize on, that Edward Waters University was the first private institution in the state of Florida and the first HBCU in the state of Florida. And most people don't know that. When they think of HBCUs in Florida, they think of FAMU and they think of Bethune-Cookman. There are 4 HBCUs. And so I think right now, traditionally, I just don't think the institution really marketed itself well in that aspect. But I think we have to do that now. We have to market who we are, what we are, and get the word out. I think traditionally we've just been missing in that component.
okay.
So always room for improvement.
Yeah, and how would you're an athletic director, so you've got to be kind of part of that marketing to some degree. I got to think. Hey guys, we're going to go to our first commercial break here. All right, we're talking these are miscellaneous trivia questions. They could be all over the board. And just a reminder to our guest, Dr. Rich, if you know the answer, don't say anything yet. Wait till we get back. We'll see if you know the answer. All right, here's our first trivia question: which metal is liquid at room temperature? All right. Which metal is liquid at room temperature? All right. Stay with us. You are listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that down. When we come back, we're going to answer that question. And we have more interview questions for Dr. Rich from EWU. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Mike McDowd and our special guest, Dr. Ivana Rich from EWU, Athletic Director. First trivia question: which metal is liquid at room temperature? Anyone on the panel?
Metal. You're asking some really good ones lately that are pretty tough. Come on, who knows this? I'm not a physicist. I'm not I'm not a chemist.
You're not Dr. Michael McDowd? No?
And I play one on TV occasionally, but it's
Okay,
all facade. It's all facade. Dr. Rich, you got this one?
Unfortunately, no, guys.
Okay, you know what? You're gonna feel silly though when I tell you the answer. You ready?
Yeah, probably.
Mercury.
Mercury.
Well,
Yeah,
that makes
'cause,
sense. Yeah, because liquid mercury you take, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Oh, hello. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
That's the only science question we have, right? So
Good.
you don't have to worry about that.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mike, you want to reintroduce our guest?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to welcome into a Sports Econ 101, coast to coast, border to border, and our international worldwide audience. We want to thank our U.S. military who are listening. And we want to thank Dr. Ivana Rich, who is in her 3rd year at Edward Waters University in the bold city of Jacksonville, Florida. And as Dr. Rich said, yeah, and I was remiss in not saying this, Edward Waters University is the #1 HBCU in the Sunshine State of Florida. So it has so much. You have so much going for you, Dr. Rich, and you can see your energy and your enthusiasm with your student athletes, with your fellow staff members, and it's exciting to see the culture that you have built around that. Talk about the uniqueness of Edward Waters University and that HBCU culture that, again, most of Americans, unless you've been around these schools, don't know about. It's really rather fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, I tell anybody when I first decided to come to Edward Waters, like I thought it's a gym. It's like a hidden gym. Where it's located. Mike probably can attest to this. You have to go down this road. It's kind of like a one-way in. You go down there and it's there, and it's nestled in this community. And it's really the lifeblood of the Newtown community in Jacksonville. And I think, as an HBCU, as a small private HBCU in the state of Florida, but even nationally, it has a church affiliation with the AME Church. It makes it quite special. And so, you'd be surprised. A lot of students come to Edward Waters because they want to stay ingrained in their AME faith. They grew up in the AME church and they want to continue that, through their education. And so we get a lot of students that way. But I think, Edward Waters, a lot of people don't know about it or are just learning about it. It has all the bells and whistles of a big HBCU.
How many
It really
students?
does. So we have about 1,200 students. We're the fastest growing HBCU in the country. I think our enrollment has increased by 20 to 25% over the last 3 years under the leadership of our president, A. Zachary Faison Jr., who is a true go-getter. And so, we've been able to do a lot of things and really change the trajectory of the institution under his leadership. We've added, facility upgrades. Our athletic facilities are beautiful. Every time we bring people on the campus, like, oh my God, I didn't know this was here. And honestly, I love hearing that. I love it. Every time I hear it, at least once a month. But I say to everyone, to us, we're the best thing, but to everyone else, we're the next best thing. Because we're up and coming. You see us all over social media, all the good things we're doing. We're really trying to put a lot into marketing what we're doing so people can see all the good things that are happening at Edward Waters.
How much does it cost to go there?
So it's about $22,000, and that includes everything. Your room and board, tuition, room and board.
That's good.
Yeah, and one of the things is, Dr. Rich, is first of all, got to mention the fact that you're an NCAA Division II school, new into that era, and it's you're starting to thrive and grow in the NCAA Division II ranks, so to speak. But that's exciting. I mean, I think someday a school like yours, and it's an interesting school, to give people a little bit of a background. It's an inner city school. It's in a, I would say maybe a tougher part of Jacksonville, but it is a city it is a school. And when I walk on your campus, I can feel the electricity. I get the energy of the kids. They're so vibrant. They're dynamic. They'll actually talk to you, they'll actually, hey, how are you? Have a good day. And so really some great stuff is happening with this school. And it looks like, you're in the Division II NCAA, rankings, but it looks like the future is so bright. First of all, you want to be successful in this particular division, but could you see yourself really moving forward into the NCAA Division I ranks?
That is a great question. And people have asked me that, a lot of my professional experience has been in Division I, and I was Division I student athlete. So they're like, are you going to take them Division I? And honestly, my answer would always no. We really and truly value the philosophy of Division II, which is life in the balance. And so that's it. Really, we're well aligned with Division II. We want to develop the next group of leaders. And so we want to have that time where they can be involved on campus in student leadership positions, where they have an opportunity to go in the summer and do internships and not be on campus year-round training, where they're preparing themselves for life after graduation. So, ideally, we're really devoted to being Division II. It took us 3 years to get to this point, and I think it's a really good fit for our institution.
I love that answer, because especially since, how many athletes are ever really going to make their profession out of it? It's so small. So it's so great to have the well-rounded, it's funny. I keep thinking my sport was bowling, and I was semi-professional at 17, but it's like, I knew I wasn't gonna, make it a profession. One, there wasn't the money in it, but I knew I was good. I was very good, but I wasn't elite enough, right? So, I knew college was going to have to be, the place for me, and spend most of my time doing that. So that's I really like that answer. That's a great answer.
And listen to this, and I know Dr. Rich is going to be able to help me out. I'm just going to be completely organic. This is a free-flowing conversation, and I'm going to be transparent. There is, and Donna, what is his name? He is the place kicker for the football team. I only called his name like once or twice all season long, by the way. That's why, as the football play-by-play guy, I'm supposed to remember all these names. But he's a transfer. He played at the university. Yeah, he played at the University of Oklahoma. Okay, Edward? Oklahoma. And he's playing for Edward Waters. Why am I bringing him up? He's an Hispanic kid from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And guess what? He currently is pursuing his second master's degree. Now, to
That's
me,
awesome.
that's success. That is success. I mean, that
Yeah.
is a brilliant story, isn't it?
Absolutely. And now, post COVID, my background is in academic support, so I spent years, getting student athletes to graduate. Essentially, that was my job. And so, even now, I encourage student athletes to come here, be diligent with your studies, pass all your classes, take some extra classes during the summer, and then have that extra year where you can get your master's degree, and maybe two, if you can, and get it paid for and use your scholarship. And so, that kind of well aligns with that whole building a well-rounded and providing a holistic experience for our student athletes. But I am 100% for that. I believe education is key, and really preparing our student athletes and providing them with those opportunities to get higher education and get their master's degrees. I think that puts us in a unique situation. And so, he's an incredible student athlete. You love when you have those come and, they become an example for your other student athletes to show them, okay, we can do this too. Because sometimes, they hearing it from us is a little bit different, but when they're hearing it from their peers.
Being a place kicker is a little different than being a quarterback, so hopefully he doesn't have to spend as much time, on the field. But Ivana, you had mentioned that you played Division One. What was your sport?
I play volleyball.
Volleyball. Okay. Are you tall? I can't tell from Zoom.
I'm taller than the average woman, so I'm about 5'11".
Oh, yeah.
But back then I could jump out of the gym, back then.
Okay. I'm like a spiker.
Yes, I was a middle blocker. That was my position.
Good. Awesome.
You,
What
you
school?
know,
Virginia Commonwealth University, the Rams.
Okay.
Lady Rams, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so you've got the experience, the exposure to do so much. One of the things Edward mentioned, and I want to mention to you. Edward and I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so we didn't get a lot of exposure to HBCUs whatsoever. The only HBCUs that I even have reference to, and I want you to kind of paint the picture nationwide. And it was a big deal, man. There was nothing better than watching Grambling and Southern on NBC Sports. And of course, what was I so enamored? I love Southern's uniforms, that blue and that yellow helmet. And of course, everybody goes to watch the bands. Now, I want you to talk. I know we have a break coming up, but talk about just that whole passion and pride and purpose that they have. So that'll be my question as we come back.
Ronna, we want you to answer that. It's funny because since you mentioned the bands, the first thing I thought of was the movie Drumline,
Yes.
which is okay. It's amazing. That movie was really pretty cool. Okay, here's our second trivia question. Again, it's not science. This one it's sports related, but it's also presidential. Who was the first sitting president to throw out the first pitch on opening day? Okay. So it wasn't George Washington because they didn't have baseball back then. Okay?
It wasn't Abraham Lincoln.
It wasn't Abraham Lincoln. It could have been. So they did have baseball back then.
Oh, geez, you're right.
That's what they used to do during breaks and during the Civil War. They played baseball. Okay, that's our trivia question.
Right. Jeez.
First sitting president to throw out the first pitch on opening day. By the way, Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican, by the way. Stay with us, Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike McDowd and our special guest, Dr. Ivana Rich. Okay, our second trivia question, who was the first sitting president to throw out the first pitch on opening day? And during the break, Mike, you thought it was the 1800s, and no, it was in the 1900s.
1900s.
Yes.
Hmm.
Do.
It was before FDR. Was it World War I era?
Just before.
Holy cow! Go ahead, Dr. Rich. You got this. You're an academic person.
Not a history buff at all. But can I take a guess?
Sure.
This is gonna be so wrong because I was thinking FDR.
Nope. Yeah, that'd be
you
before
said
that.
1900s. No, that's not a good guess.
Right? Howard Taft in 1910. He was the first sitting president to throw out the first pitch.
Who was it?
Taft. 1910.
Taft, really?
Yeah, I think it was right
Wow.
after Teddy Roosevelt, if I'm not mistaken. All
There's
right.
a
The
junior
next
college
question
named
will be about food, and it'll be a little easier, I think.
There's a junior college named after him in Taft, California, isn't there? There's Taft
Yeah,
College, Taft Junior College.
yeah.
Is it something
Made
like
him-
that? Oh well.
Okay.
Anyways, their big rival is Bakersfield College. I just have to throw that in. That's good knowledge.
Have to throw that in.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Dr. Rich, how did you get your doctorate? Well, I'm just kind of curious. What is it a medical degree or a PhD?
It's a PhD. I got it from the University of South Carolina. So I'm also in Gamecock. But people would think my degree is in something sports related, and it has nothing to do with sports. My degree is actually in educational technology.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a
Okay.
like tech geek. And like I said, love education. So I'm a curriculum developer as well. And so that's why I chose that program. Loved it.
See, Mike and I are kind of, especially me, I'm kind of old, so I'm still using an abacus. But so, Mike, you were asking a question about the bands.
Well, not just the bands, but like I think that the common how do I say, the common scene for most Americans was watching Southern and Grambling play a national football game on NBC Sports. You'd see the legend Coach Eddie Robinson, who's
Oh, yeah.
just he's the Vince Lombardi of HBCU sports for sure.
Absolutely.
But can you tell us about really? I don't know about that game, but first of all, I think at one point in my life, I only thought there were two HBCUs, Grambling and Southern. But as I mentioned, there's like 99 of them, almost 100. Just talk about that overall passion, pride, and purpose. And yeah, definitely tell us about why bands are so important.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably one of the best games to watch. That is an incredible game. I think that's the Bayou Classic, maybe. I think that's what it's called. That game truly displays all things HBCU. And so from the fans, from the fandom, from the alumni coming in, from the tailgating to the band. And so it's this unofficial joke amongst HBCUs that people don't come to watch football; they come to watch the band. They're coming for halftime.
Heard it.
But it's a true experience. Like our bands are incredible. It's probably one of our favorite parts of the game. It's an experience. You have the dancers. They're gonna cultivate a particular playlist for the game. The dancers are going to be correlated with the playlist. And then, here at Edward Waters, we have Purple Passion. And so Purple Passion is really the first plus size dance group to exist. They have another group over at Alabama State. I think they call them the Golden Girls. I could be wrong. But plus size dance group, people love them. They're acrobatic, they flip, they do splits, and so it's just an incredible experience. But the bands, they culminate what HBCU stand for, that pride, that sense of pride, that sense of hard work, the love, and so it just brings so much joy to the environment to have the band. And so anytime we have an event, I try to get the band at everything.
Hey, you got to do us a favor, Edward. I tried to work it out. Henry Smith is also an administrator of the athletic department. I tried to ask Dr. Rich to have him put on the tiger head and uniform to be to wear. I guess Henry would not do it. I understand, Henry. I get it. But we got to have you on again. So we got to meet your mascot and somehow, some way, in the back, have in one of our boxes the marching band to actually hear them play, because the Edward Waters University marching band is second to none. I'm telling you, Edward, they put on a show that is just like awesome. And Ivana, you can answer all those questions.
Oh yeah, we're gonna make that happen. And Henry Smith, he's actually covering for me in another meeting, so that's his reason for not being in the mascot. But I think that the pride, Dr. Alvin Davis, he's our director of bands here at Edward Waters, and he himself is passionate. Like, you're going to see him out there dancing with them, and just watch him. I watched them practice a couple times, and it's very similar to athletics. That's what people don't. It's very similar. And so I watch his leadership, and I watch him coach them up. They're talking about, okay, when we play this, when we play that, and if it's not right, they're going to play it again. but their job is to exhilarate our crowd, to bring everyone together. And I think that's what the bands at HBCUs truly stand for. They're that glue that holds everyone together. It doesn't matter who you're rooting for. So if the visiting team band is going to perform, the home team crowd is going to stand up and clap for them at the end of the performance. They're going to jam. They're going to jam with them. And so the bands bring everyone together.
So I was in Scotland on a cruise in August, and someone had told me I'd never heard of this. And I think it's called the Band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland.
Oh,
You want to see some
really?
performance of military bands? It's incredible. I mean, the tickets were like, you're talking about a huge stadium. Each ticket was almost $400,
Wow.
no matter where you're sitting. So I mean, if you ever check that out sometime, go ahead, Mike.
I actually saw them. Yeah, I actually saw them
You did?
perform. They're amazing. And one of the things bringing it home to Jacksonville, Florida, for our national and international audience, one thing that I really want Dr. Ivana Rich to, by the way, who is our special guest in her third year at Edward Waters University. Edward, I got to tell you, man, you and I have seen a lot. We've been around Cal, Stanford, USC, UCLA, blah blah blah, Oregon, but nobody puts on a homecoming parade like Edward Waters University. Their parade is off the charts. You've got to paint a little bit of a picture for us, Dr. Rich, because you have how many marching bands in that band alone? And what is it, almost like a 2-hour parade or something like that?
Yeah, 2 hours, sometimes 3, depending on the year. You could have about 120 to 150 entries. And so that includes bands, dance groups, of course, our president and royal court. Sometimes the athletic teams go in there, all the different community groups. But our high school bands, even in our high school bands in this area, so good. And so we do the parade of bands. They come in. We have about 15 to 20 bands. And then even during the homecoming game, they stay. And then after the game, they play with our band. And so in between time, they're in our gym and they're competing against each other. So anytime if you need some entertainment between the parade and the football game, you can go in the gym and watch them compete and play against each other. And so you see it at even, yeah.
Doesn't it?
It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, Mardi Gras in New Orleans is kind of like that.
Right. Definitely gives that feel. But with that same soul behind it. But to see the young people do it, it's incredible.
Edward, you got a question? Go ahead.
I did want to ask you, Dr. Rich, how did you get to the position of athletic director?
Well, I was at Norfolk State University, which is Division I HBCU in Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia. And I was there for about 7 years, and I was the associate athletic director and senior woman administrator. So sort of right under the athletic director. And one day, a search firm reached out to me about this position here at Edward Waters. And it's really a funny story because I'm very comfortable being a number 2. I'm a worker, keep my head down, get things done. And so I just sent my materials to the search firm to do my due diligence, because I didn't want them to not, consider me for future opportunities if, it got to the point where I was like, oh, I want to be athletic director. And then I, heard back from the search firm and they told me that the president liked my application materials. And I'm like, who, me, my materials? And so literally, this is a true story. And so it just kind of went on from there. I had an interview, a Zoom interview, and a few days later, I was on campus doing a full 2-day interview on campus. And probably a few days later from that, I was offered the position.
Awesome.
And so, within about 2 weeks, I became an athletic director, not anticipating or envisioning that for myself, but I wouldn't change it for the world because I think, God put me here to do some great work and to really make a difference for these student athletes.
Hey, Dr. Rich, what about the business side of HBCU sports? Edward and I talk about it a lot, the ever-changing landscape of college sports, quote, NIL. How is schools like Edward Waters and other HBCU institutions going to try to capitalize on that NIL thing? Because let's face it, you guys can't really play paid players, maybe a little bit, but it's such college sports is just, and I'm going to say this, I think radically changed, unfortunately, but that's where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. The landscape is continuously changing, and it's something we talk about in every convention or conference I go to with other ADs. And at the Division II level, and especially in the HBCU space, I think we have a unique opportunity when it comes to NIL. Do I think we're going to be able to pay our players like with Alston money and things like that at Division I level? Not at all. But I think that we have a unique opportunity to create opportunities for our student athletes to benefit off their name, image, and likeness, but through different avenues. So we partner with a company called Influxer, and so they make apparel and they put the students' names and numbers, however they want to market themselves. And so their families can buy that apparel and they make a commission off of it. And so
Nice.
that's a little bit different from, going to Pizza Hut and just getting a deal. And so, we're in a competitive market here. And to me, this is not a big market for NIL here in Jacksonville, but I think trying to find creative opportunities for our student athletes to benefit off of these things, I think that's what we're going to have to do at the HBCU space to try to remain competitive.
So I'm kind of curious because you're in Jacksonville. Do you ever have a scout from the Jaguars just kind of pop on in and check out your football team?
We have had scouts come here. Over the past few years, we've definitely had some scouts come here. We're working on some things with the Jaguars right now, where they're going to be coming and doing some student athlete development programming for us. So really excited about that. Marcus Pollard, who's the director of player development and I think community relations for the Jaguars, he is building a program or a framework with us where he'll come over, he'll bring players over to really engage and help provide that holistic experience for our student athletes.
Awesome. That's great. All right, we're going to go to our last commercial break here. What is the most consumed vegetable in the U.S.? That's our trivia question. And we have a little time here, so I'm going to give my silly joke of the week. Ready? After hearing a sermon about lies and deceit, a man wrote the IRS, "I have been unable to sleep, knowing that I've cheated on my income tax. I have reviewed my taxable income and have enclosed a check for $900. If I still can't sleep, I'll send in the rest." I like that one. All right. Stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be back with some closing comments. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host. I'm laughing because Mike's doing something in the background there. Along with Mike McDowd and our special guest, Dr. Ivana Rich from EWU. Third trivia question, what is the most consumed vegetable in the U.S.? Anyone?
Dr. Rich?
What do you
I'm
think?
going to say broccoli.
No, kids don't like broccoli. Potato. Potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
I figure French fries like that. Okay. Let's see here. You want to ask one last quick question there, Mike?
Yeah, super quick question. I think it's an important one regarding HBCU history and recent history. What type of impact did Deion Sanders have for HBCU universities? He was very successful at Jackson State University. Talk about what he did.
Yeah, I think Deion, the Deion effect, they call it, I think he really shed light on HBCUs and everything HBCUs have to offer because people started tuning in to watch Jackson State. And so they then became exposed to the HBCU culture. I also think he made a major impact on recruiting for HBCUs because now players know they can go to HBCUs and have successful careers and have league potential because a lot of them, that's what they're looking for. So I think from a recruitment and exposure standpoint, Deion really did his thing at Jackson State.
Gotcha. Well, Dr. Ivana Rich from EWU, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation, learning about more about historically HBCU. It's funny because I know historically Black universities. Okay. Are you guys ready? Here's our thoughts for the day. If you're bald, what color do they put on your driver's license for your hair? I don't know. And how is it that we put a man on the moon before we figured out it would be a good idea to put wheels on luggage? Right. All right, audience, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a driver's. Look at the older convention. Okay, try this again. Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.